Welcome back to another new episode of the Morph Your Mind podcast. This is episode 31, and today we are talking about self-development, continuing education, continuing to learn, and the importance of this, as well as the methods that we can do this in the modern day. So I am your host, Justin Wright. We'll be joined in a little bit by my co-host, Chrissy, Barron. And before we get officially started, I would like to thank our sponsor, Nova 3 Labs. If you use the discount code podcast15, podcast15 at NOVA, the number 3 LABS.com, you can save some money on some of the best quality performance, focus, sleep supplements on the market. Whatever it is you need, chances are they have it, and it is high quality stuff. It is tested, third party tested, and we've seen people get some incredible results from using those products. So use that code, put in your order. And now this week, we want to talk to you guys about focusing, about learning, about expanding your knowledge base, because self-development is incredibly important, and it is unfortunately something that for many people tends to stop once they enter the working world or they enter the quote-unquote real world. And it's incredibly important that we don't stop learning, that we don't stop pushing, because there is so much information that is now available at our fingertips. In the modern world, we have access to more information that we can access in a shorter amount of time than ever before in the history of humankind. So if you think about that, if we look at our ancestors, the amount of time that it took to relay information, and if we go way back, if we're talking before we had written language, or before we were able to record these things in an official manner, stories were handed down through telling stories to people at nights around a campfire. And it's important to understand that these stories were handed down to illustrate important tenets or important morals of that culture, but they didn't have written language. It was hard to pass these stories down, and oftentimes these things were distorted over the ages. And a really incredible book that goes into the history of humankind and this evolution that has led us to modern man is a book called Sapiens, and I highly recommend that you read that. If you haven't read it, check it out. The audio book, or the audible version, is a good listen. It's long, but it's got a ton of incredibly important information about our development. And it's important to look at the past to understand how incredible the present moment truly is. We have access to endless information at our fingertips. And I want to start off the discussion with a quote from Warren Buffett, who most of you should hopefully know, but he's one of the most successful investors of all time. And he says that the best investment you can make is in yourself. And he is encouraging people constantly to read, to expand their knowledge base, to take in as much information as possible. And he himself, part of why he was so successful is because he reads upwards of 500 pages of stock information on companies. He reads through reports, earnings reports, all of this data so that he can better educate himself and make better investment decisions. And obviously this is one specific example, but this is one of the most successful businessmen in the world who is consistently and constantly trying to expand his knowledge in a field that many would argue he is already an expert in. So he's already at the pinnacle of that field, but continues to expand his knowledge on a daily basis because he understands the importance of that. And another quote that ties in directly to this is actually from Johnny Carson, so kind of a famous American individual, but he said that people will pay more to be entertained than educated. And this is important if we think about the current state of the entertainment industry, how Netflix has expanded and is now offering original programming and original content because people want to take in that entertainment. They want to spend their free time just watching and being entertained instead of trying to expand their knowledge, instead of trying to learn more. And I want you to understand the importance of educating ourselves in the modern world. Try to think about what would happen if you simply were to read 25 pages a day, how many books you would be able to finish on average by the end of the month, even if you're able to finish 3 to 4 books a month. That's probably more than many of you have actually read in the last year or even more. And it's surprising the number of people I speak with who have graduated college or now in the working world, and they haven't actually read a book on their own or of their own volition since graduating from college. And these are staggering statistics, and they're incredibly common. And you look at the prevalence of fake news or propaganda or satire in the world now, and there's actually companies and businesses that are creating software or working on software that can actually tell you the validity of an article on the internet, because there is so much bogus information out there. But the problem is, because we're not educating ourselves and because a lot of us are willfully ignorant, that information gets viewed as being real, and it's hard for many people to differentiate what is fake from what is true. And because there's so much information available, this causes a lot of problems and a lot of miscommunications in the modern world. So it's of incredible importance that we are able to continue to educate ourselves. And it's really a shame that we don't, given how much information we have and how easy it is to learn. And I want to segue just briefly into types of learning, because this is an important discussion to have when we're talking about self-development, when we're talking about taking in new information. While I'm suggesting reading, for some people, just reading information or viewing it on a page or on a web page or whatever it may be, that may not necessarily be the most efficient way for those individuals to learn. So maybe some people struggle to learn in that sense. Just reading the information, it doesn't assimilate well, or they're not able to understand those concepts well. And so this is why a lot of people who are brilliant struggle in traditional schooling. There are many successful entrepreneurs, Gary Vaynerchuk being one who talks about this all the time, where he essentially failed school or almost failed school growing up, but is now a very successful business person because his mind works in a different way, or he learns in a different way. And there's even stories of Albert Einstein failing math before he, created the theory of relativity and worked through some of the most complex physics of his time. And so there are people who are brilliant but do not effectively learn well via traditional methods. And the other benefit of the modern age and the modern landscape is that there are so many different ways available to us to learn. So let's say reading does not work well for you. You can listen to an audiobook instead of reading that book. So maybe listening, if you're actually taking it in that sense, maybe that allows you to assimilate the information better. Maybe instead of at the gym, instead of listening to, a playlist in your headphones, you can put on a podcast or put on an audiobook and use that time to kind of learn information as you're going. So Joe Rogan on his podcast recently interviewed, or semi-recently interviewed, the man who has the world record for the 100-mile track ultra endurance event. So he ran 100 miles on a track on a closed circuit. He actually averaged about a 7-minute mile, which is pretty ridiculous when you think about that for that distance. But one of the things that he says he does, and that he took advantage of when he started training for these ultra endurance events, is he started listening to podcasts and listening to audiobooks while he was training, because for him, that was an incredibly effective way to take in information. The other benefit of the internet making things readily available to us is now there are 1,000,001 courses available online, both traditional in the sense of traditional schooling where you watch lectures, listen to lectures, take exams. There are also hybrid courses where you have written material, audio material, video material, quizzes. Every subject matter expert in almost every subject likely has a course or has contributed to a course somewhere. So if there's a subject that you want to learn about, it's just a matter of doing a quick search, trying to track down that information. And there are a bunch of sites that actually compile these courses readily available for us. So I know that there are universities like MIT that have put free lectures available on the internet. There are websites like Udemy, which have courses from subject matter experts readily available. Masterclass is another popular app now where you can learn things specifically from people who are considered experts in those fields. So you can learn information directly from some of the highest performers in that field. So whatever version of learning works best for you, whatever way that you take in information the best, whatever way makes you more readily understand that subject, you can find a method to acquire more information in a way that is conducive to you learning it most effectively. And because there is all this information available, because everything that we could possibly want to know is at our fingertips, it's also an incredible opportunity for you to set yourself apart from those around you. Because so many people would rather be entertained than educated, because so many people do not want to spend the extra time reading, listening to an audiobook, taking a course online, because that subset of the population does not want to do that, because so many people are not willing to take that time, it leaves an open doorway for you to step through and get yourself out ahead of the crowd, to actually separate yourself from other people who are in the same field as you, who are trying to do the same things as you. So if you're a business owner, for example, or you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to build a successful company, the more that you can learn, the more information you can acquire, that is going to give you a leg up on the competition or a leg up on the other people out there who are trying to do the same thing you're doing. Because chances are a lot of them are not willing to spend that extra time to gain the extra knowledge and evolve as an individual on their quest to build their business or be successful in their field. We've talked countless times in other episodes of this podcast about the importance of separating yourself from the pack in small ways. And this is a very tangible and easy to execute way that you can start to separate yourself right now from other people in your field or other people who are doing what you want to do. It's easy if you break it down. If we talk about taking an entire online course, that can be daunting. Or if you think about finishing an entire book, that can be daunting as well. But what I want you to understand is that if you read 5, 10, 15, 25 pages a day in a book, eventually you will finish that book. And eventually you will finish more books as long as you keep reading at that rate. It's not about doing a bunch of work at once. It's not about doing a ton at once. It's not about finishing an online course in one weekend. It's about chipping away at that course or spending a little bit of time every day to work on it. And if you build it into your schedule the same way you would build in a meeting or build in something else for your job, if you build it in and force yourself to work on it, little by little, you're going to make progress, you're going to expand your knowledge, and you're going to give yourself that very valuable leg up on your competition and on those around you. And even if we're just talking about interpersonal relationships, having more information allows you to have better conversations with people because you're going to more easily be able to connect with others around you. And this is important for both personal and professional relationships. Being able to enhance the quality of those conversations because of your expanded knowledge base is going to improve the quality of those relationships and improve the strength of those relationships.